Unlike the Italians, the Germans now have a cruiser commander that can spec into secondaries. It's another Azur Lane commander, and her name is Azur Lane Ägir, but they might as well call her Azur Lane Schroeder, because I've played Azur Lane Ägir, the ship, with the commander as a full secondary build a couple of times, and I don't think it comes anywhere close to the power of Schroeder's secondaries. Schroeder is a bully. I think I've shown you some proof of that on YouTube before, but it's also, I think, probably the best secondary ship in the game. I think these secondaries are better than any secondaries on the German battleships. The closest ones might be the German battle cruisers like Prinz Heinrich or Schlieffen, but Schroeder, I think, takes the cake, and we've got Azur Lane Ägir at the helm. Now, previously, before Azur Lane Ägir existed, I was running Azur Lane Bismarck as the commander, and she might still be a great choice for the Schroeder in particular, but Azur Lane Ägir, I think, compares pretty favorably to her. I'll show you the build now as we come around this corner, because the action is about to start getting pretty hot and heavy, let's say. And then we can compare Azur Lane Ägir and Azur Lane Bismarck a little bit later on, because there will be a lull in this battle. But I'll tell you before we begin that I think they compare pretty favorably, and as you could tell from the build, I'm running a full secondary build with Hipper and Haruna as the two inspirations. Now we come around the corner, we see that the Delta Cap is occupied by something. Turns out it's not a destroyer, but a very stealthy cruiser, the D7P, who was spotted, I think, at 8.9 kilometers. And well, you can be really stealthy like that, but if you push in too far and you get spotted by an overly aggressive Schroeder, you can see these secondaries are beginning to tear this guy apart. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you're focused by these things. They are German secondaries, so they have improved penetration, and they can pen up to 32 millimeters of armor, plus they start fires. And being HE, it's not like the penetration really cares about the armor angle. Same way you would have if you were using, say, the Michelangelo or the Napoli. They have sap secondaries, which hit harder than these, I suppose, but they can bounce off steep angles, whereas these, well, just ask the D7P how he feels. Probably not too good. We end up getting a fist on him, and this push might not work too well unless we were paying attention to the mini-map. You can see in the center of the map in the Charlie cap, there is a battleship hugged up against an island there, and the fact that he's in that position means his guns don't actually have shots on us. If they did, then we would be broadside to him, and this push probably wouldn't work out too well. But as it stands, D7P is gone, and so now we have this IJN battle hybrid cruiser battleship thing. Dewa with, the torpedo dropping planes. He's doing the thing that they always do since their guns are on the front, just sitting there bow tanking. And our armor on the Schroeder, even though the bow can be overmatched, is good enough to protect ourselves from his 16-inch guns, should he choose to shoot them at us, which he doesn't. I guess he shoots at the cruiser that's pushing in behind us, which I believe is Azuma, so fair enough. But I would think that I'm probably a little bit more of a threat with these secondaries. We're going to go around the island now, just to make doubly sure that battleship in the center really won't have any shots on our broadside. Speaking of, we get a shot on the Azur Lane Chapayev's broadside for a citadel. And that's one good thing about Azur Lane Ägir. We'll get to that momentarily, but she does improve the accuracy on these main battery guns somewhat. And that's nice, because I never thought Schroeder had a particularly accurate main battery. But there we go with Chapayev, another citadel. Torpedoes incoming from the sky, courtesy of the IJN hybrid. We take a few of them, they do hurt, but we manage the close quarters expert on the Chapayev. He did launch some torpedoes of his own at us, but we're able to avoid. And as you can see, the belt armor we have is perfectly fine when it comes to, bouncing shells from a battleship like that. Another fist, and just like that, this entire delta flank is cleared out, thanks in part to our very aggressive push. Turns out Azur Lane Ägir on Schroeder makes the thing so powerful that you can simply drive forward and win. We have 282 secondary hits, and I wish there was a way that we could see how much damage the secondaries did compared to the main battery guns. Wargaming, if you're watching this, update the end battle screen to give us a detailed view of that, because I suspect that at least half of this damage, probably more, comes from the secondaries. I don't think we did a lot of shooting of the main battery. Anyway, as we approach the other side of the map where all the enemies are, we can compare Azur Lane Ägir to Azur Lane Bismarck. Now, Bismarck, of course, is a battleship commander, so not all of her skills are applicable to cruisers. Azur Lane Ägir, on the other hand, cruiser commander, so all the skills are applicable. And Azur Lane Ägir has a base trait that decreases incoming damage to cruisers by 4% and improves the cruiser Sigma by 3% when she's fully maxed, which is why we have slightly better accuracy on the main battery guns, and I feel like that's a good thing, especially since it's just in the inspiration slot. You don't have to sacrifice one of the inspiration slots for the secondaries, like we have Haruna and Hipper, for, somebody like Norman Scott in order to improve the accuracy on these main battery guns. If you agree with me and you think they're a little bit lacking in that department, that accuracy buff is just built in to Azur Lane Ägir, so that's nice to have in the base trait. And then both Azur Lane Ägir and Azur Lane Bismarck have a key skill in the third row, and that skill on Azur Lane Bismarck was the primary reason I was using her. Both of them have a third row skill that reduces incoming projectile damage to your ship, while the secondaries are aiming, firing, or reloading by 6%. And that's the same buff for both Azur Lane Bismarck and Azur Lane Ägir. Reduces incoming damage by 6%, while the secondaries are aiming, firing, or reloading. But that's all Bismarck's skill in the third row does. Azur Lane Ägir's does something in addition to that. It also increases secondary shell damage by 14% for 10 seconds per main battery shot. So every time you shoot the main battery, the damage on these secondaries goes up by 14%, and being German with the ability to pen 32, that 14% damage buff coupled with the reload, especially if you can reduce the reload with the epic secondary module like we've done, well, that makes the secondaries even more lethal and oppressive than they already are. And then the last thing to sort of compare would be on Azur Lane Bismarck. I have Master Mechanic in her fourth row of skills, so that gives 2 extra heals. And I've got Fight Fire with Fire in her legendary row of skills, which does help a little bit with a cruiser like this that you want to be pushing in. Very possible that you'll get lit on fire fairly often. But on Azur Lane Ägir, in the fourth row, I've got Properly Meticulous, and then I've got Fully Packed in the legendary row for an extra heal, extra secondary, enhanced secondary targeting consumable, whatever it's called. So I'd say Azur Lane Ägir is probably who I'm going to stick with for this build. Even though I do like the 2 extra heals from Azur Lane Bismarck, that's probably the only reason I could think why you would want to use her over Azur Lane Ägir, now that this commander exists in the game. And this, it's a bit of a blowout. All the enemy ships are dropping like flies at this point. Normally I don't like to show these, but when you drive straight through a flank and have some teammates with you and the 3 of you just clear out the flank instantly and turn it into a blowout, in part because the secondary power on the Schroeder is so absurd, well, I think this is a good demonstration of just how ridiculous it is. Look at this, 453 secondary hits, only 5 fires, which, you might think that's not too much, but 2 close quarters experts, high caliber, almost 150,000 damage done, and the only red ship left alive is a Hipper, who was last spotted somewhere in the vicinity of the Alpha Cap, I believe. He's going to end up being behind an island here, where I and the rest of my teammates that pushed with me through the Delta flank can't actually shoot him, but the remainder of the blue team is going to end up taking him out. And of course, this is a very one-sided victory. But yeah, Schroeder, I think it has the best secondaries in the game. I don't think it's particularly close. I'm surprised more people don't complain about this thing, to be honest with you, because these secondaries are just so ridiculous. If you're in a situation like that Dewa was, where you're just sitting there and allowing them to melt you, they can do a significant amount of damage in a short amount of time. The only thing is, you don't really get any rewards for it. Belfast ends up being top of the leaderboard with us second, since the secondary XP is so nerfed. But if you enjoy secondaries, this is probably one of the most fun experiences you can have in the game. So I'd recommend forgetting Azur Lane Ägir the ship. Just think of Azur Lane Ägir as Azur Lane Schroeder, because this is the ship she's clearly meant for. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.